Is there a writer that has impressed you, or that you used him as a model, or no?
No, but you know, there have been a lot of writers along the way who've had an unhealthy influence on me.
You said Joyce.
Well, Joyce, absolutely. Faulkner. You know, I mean, the things that I loved in Faulkner were often things I didn't even understand. You know, when you're young, and it was very like The Sound and the Fury, full of mysterioso, and I loved the language and the fact that I didn't quite understand it all. And I really liked, you know, 100 Years of Solitude, I think, was a book that changed many, many writers, and I was among them. And my misunderstanding of the book, my ignorance of how deeply it grew from its own soil, that misunderstanding affected how I wrote. And so the misunderstandings continue everywhere, I guess, when we write and read across cultures. That's what happens.
We accept that a book, good book, help us to become better people, the society to become better. Can today literature affect the human conscience as is doing the television?
We talk about changing the human being and even changing the human mechanism. And we're living in an age now where people are generally forgetting how to read at all. And if you think how short the period of reading in history has been, so short, where people generally, I mean, more than aristocrats, but people could read, and you could go to school and you could learn to read, and you would have a better life because you could read and you were not illiterate. And then you have and this is quite a short time, and the great works of art are produced and can be read, and the mind engages with reading in a particular way. At this particular moment in history, it seems to me, with where you have a culture driven by the marketplace, which I think would Tocqueville also be very concerned about. No one gives a damn about reading, and not in this culture, really, not very much. And they're worried, and when it comes to television, they're worried about what will sell and what will not sell. And so you have a whole culture that's letting almost giving up on reading. And then the other part for all of the entertainments like video games and the web, and catering to quite different sets of sensibilities and specializations of one's brain and so on. So I read a thing, so people are worried about how you teach. People say, how do you teach kids to read? And this is in the New York Times by a serious journalist who's talking about, well, boys have trouble reading, and if you're going to have books for boys, it should have this and that, and it should have at least one big explosion. And I think, oh, come on. Somehow or other we have abdicated a responsibility to teach. We can learn to read, or are our brains been so wrecked by television and the internet that we might as well give it up anyway and enter a more gloriously stupid age than we've seen for a long time. So books will change us, definitely, but we're in a culture that doesn't seem to value the book anymore. I have a friend who went to live in Los Angeles, and a friend came to visit her apartment, and she said, it's just so New York. What a New York apartment. And in the end, the friend realized it was because there were books in it. Anyway.
You are so critical about the American culture, the American political system, everything.
Well, if I was Greek, I would be very critical of the Greek culture too. And as an Australian, I was always very critical of. I do love these buildings.
Yes.
I mean, the buildings in Soho are just sort of lovely. When I first came here, and I lived in the village on Bedford Street, and I was very concerned that I was leaving the sort of the layered part of my life where I'd known so many different sorts of people, and then I thought I'd come to New York and only know writers, and which to me is not an ideal way to live. But I lived on the street for about 15 years. And it was just great. It was a better neighbourhood than any I ever lived in an Australian urban space. And I knew so many different sorts of people, from the sort of possibly criminal to and intellectuals and artists and just people on the street. And so I still like to go over there.
After 20 years, do you feel that you are a stranger here?
I'm a stranger everywhere.
Foreigner. Okay, yes.
I was born strange.
You are living here in New York for last 20 years, more maybe. What did this American culture give you as a writer, as a person? What have you gained here?
I guess I've gained a lot of things to argue against. Sometimes it's very hard to know how you've changed, what you've absorbed, how you are different. I mean, the thing that I always thought was that there was a great benefit to being an outsider, a foreigner, in seeing the weirdness of things. And so I thought, for instance, that writing Parrot and Olivier in America was not a book an American would have even wanted to write or think about. And I think that's a book in which I can say something sensible about America to Americans only because I'm an outsider. Likewise, being an outsider, this is not about America, but being here, I doubt I would have written the Ned Kelly book. And I wrote the Ned Kelly book being away from my own country and seeing its quite considerable strangeness. And the more and more you think about Australia, so you see the strangeness of both places. As for America itself, well, I think I've been here there have been many bad periods of American history, but this is a particularly bad one. And
this one?
Well, if we face the moment, if we're looking at the climate, if we're looking at growth, capitalism, corporatism, and this nasty fragmentation of this culture, it's a very frightening time. It's a sort of a terminal time.
But why you came here? I mean,
normally, you know how to answer that question. If you find someone who's living in some weird place, and you say, "How come you're here?" You know what the answer is.
Okay.
But because I understood from your answer that I understood from your previous answer that. The fact that you like here, it's to be a stranger, to be a foreigner.
Well, it's inevitable that I'm a foreigner. I mean, I've got lots and lots of American friends.
Yes, okay, but remembers me.
But I'm a foreigner. I have an English wife. We're foreigners together. We come home each night and sit there and talk about the Americans. We both got American passports. What do you think the Haitians do when they go home? And the people from the Dominican Republic, and the people from Africa, and the people from Afghanistan, and they do the same thing. It's, the city's full of people in two places. No cake shall go to the prisoner, said the trap. I could smell his foreign, spicy smell. He had a handlebar moustache and his scalp was shining through his hair. Said he, no cake shall go to the prisoner without me inspecting it first. And he waved his big, soft, white hand, thus indicating my mother should place her basket on his desk. He untied the muslin, his fingernails so clean they looked like they was washed in lye. And to this day I can see them livid instruments as they broke my mother's cake apart.